The Tenant at 2:17 the first night the kettle screamed at 2:17 a.m. I told myself I'd set the timer without realizing it. I was still learning the quirks of the new apartment, how the bathroom light hummed before it warmed, how the radiator hissed like a sleeping animal when it finally sputtered on, how trucks on the avenue outside made the old plaster tremble in its bones. I'd moved in on a Wednesday, alone and grateful to be somewhere cheap and quiet. Everyone said the building was a steal. Everyone also said don't ask why. On the floor plan, Unit B looked normal. Living room with a bay window, little hallway kitchen, small bedroom that would barely fit a double mattress, a closet that was deep and oddly narrow. In person, the weirdness was harder to miss. The closet had a hasp for a padlock on the outside. The bedroom door didn't quite close. The jamb leaned away, like the house was shrugging. The peephole in the front door had been stuffed with tissue, then painted over. When I picked at it with my key the first day, the landlord, a gawky man in a suit that had outlived its decade, said, "Leave that. Tenants complain about drafts." He never looked me in the eyes. He talked to my shoulder, signed the lease with a pen that didn't work until he shook it like a thermometer, and gave me 2 keys, one brass, one ugly black, plastic that looked like it belonged to a car fob but didn't unlock anything I recognized. "Basement access," he said, tapping the plastic key with a nail bitten to the quick. "Laundry storage. Only sometimes." "Sometimes?" I asked. "It's a temperamental building," he said, as if that was something we both knew. I spent my first night unpacking, putting plates in cabinets and books on shelves, making a nest out of my pile of clothes because the mattress delivery wasn't until morning. Sometime after midnight, I fell asleep on the living room floor with the TV low, my brain stitching stray noises into dreams. I woke to the kettle in the kitchen beginning to murmur thin, rising hint of steam. When it screamed, the sound was so sharp I sat straight up, heart galloping. The kitchenette was dark except for the moonlight folding through the blinds. The electric kettle switch was down. The power light was off. Its metal belly was cool under my palm. I unplugged it anyway, carried it to the sink like a scolded cat, and left it there with its lid open. Back on the floor, I watched the glowing digits on my phone crawl past 2:20 and told myself a story about pipes and pressure, about how old places made old noises, about how I'd been tired enough to dream while awake. The next night, I fell asleep quicker. Mattress delivered. Sheets that smelled like the inside of a plastic bag, stretching tight across a bed too close to the wall because there wasn't room to center it. At 2:12 a.m., something ticked in the ceiling, a small, deliberate rhythm, like fingernails on a tabletop. At 2:16 it stopped. At 2:17 the kettle began to scream. I was up fast enough to catch the last of the sound before it died on its own. The kettle sat on the countertop like a gull on a railing, wholly unbothered. I put my ear to the wall above the counter and heard what I wanted to hear: pipes settling, the building breathing. When I turned around, I noticed the closet door was open 2 inches, the hasp keeping it from swinging further. I was certain I'd left it closed. I went to close it now, and as the door met the frame, the hall light flickered. If I'd told anyone that night what I was feeling, I would have dressed it in reasonable clothing. New place jitters, post-breakup loneliness, the way the brain invents patterns when it wants to feel in control. If I'd told the truth, I would have said something older. There was a taste to the air at 2:17 a.m. that I hadn't learned to ignore yet. Not the taste of burning or of dust. The taste of someone standing behind you, seeing if you will turn. I started leaving little proofs. Maybe you've done it when you're sure something is wrong but too embarrassed to say it out loud. I taped a hair across the closet seam at eye level. I balanced a nickel on its edge on the bedroom dresser. I sprinkled a thin veil of flour in front of the hallway, just a smear that a shoe would disturb. I pulled a grocery bag tight over the kettle with a rubber band, the handles fluttering like a thin throat. I placed my sneakers side by the door and memorized how the laces fell. The third night, I slept badly because I was waiting. At 2:15 a.m., a truck groaned down the street. At 2:16, the ceiling ticked. At 2:17, the kettle tried to scream through plastic and made a suffocated sound that drew the breath right out of me. I launched from bed and hit the light, and saw, at a glance, that the closet hair was broken and curled like a fallen eyelash on the floor. The nickel lay flat. The fifth of footprints, bare, small, and surprisingly clean, were pressed in the flour, not like someone had walked across it, but like someone had paused in it, pivoted, and then stepped backward into the hallway shadow. My sneakers had new neighbors beside them, toes pointing neatly toward the door. Was a second pair of shoes, thin-soled, cracking at the heel, laces tucked inside as if to make no sound. "I'm calling the police," I said to the room, before the room could decide what to be. My voice trembled and sounded like somebody else who had also been pretending to be brave. The dispatcher kept me on the line while 2 officers knocked on the front door, then knocked again, then came in with my permission. We walked through the apartment together. Officer 1, older and bored, shined his light into the closet and said, "It's a closet." Officer 2, younger and still believing that things had clean answers, tapped the flower footprints with his pen and said, "You do this." "I live alone," I said. "Any visitors?" he asked, with a tone that means it could be blamed on a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a pair of drunk friends. "I moved here to not have visitors," I said. "They made me wait in the living room while they checked the bedroom and bathroom again." One of them climbed onto the kitchen chair and tapped at the ceiling tile with the flashlight. "Drop ceiling," he said to his partner. "No crawl space, just the footer for the upstairs." "I'm the top floor," I said. "There's just roof." Officer 1 crouched to examine the second pair of shoes. "These yours?" he asked, without picking them up. "No, you haven't seen them before." "I would remember," I said. I swallowed because you don't want to say certain words in front of cops with humorless faces. Words like "I would never," or "I promise," or "I swear," because they make you sound like a person on the edge of making up a story. "They're not mine." He stood, scribbled something, handed me a card. "We'll file a report," he said. "Get a deadbolt on that front door. Maybe a camera. You can't be too careful." After they left, the apartment did a thing I didn't know it could do. It felt like it exhaled, as if it had been holding its breath until the witnesses were gone. I picked up the shoes carefully. They were damp inside, slick with the condensed sweat of someone who had walked far and then waited. On the insole, a faded stamp, Sable Motel, 633 Route 4, a place I didn't know. I put the shoes in a trash bag and tied it hard enough to whiten my knuckles and set it outside in the hallway by my door. In the morning, the bag was gone. I told myself then that the building was old and porous. It had seams. The landlord had other keys. A neighbor had confused my door for theirs. The shoes had been left outside someone else's apartment and, slipped under mine to play a joke. The theories braided together because any rope is better than the feeling of falling and nothing to grab. I did what the officer said. I bought a deadbolt, my first, the kind with a long throw. The hardware guy said, "You sure you want to install that yourself?" And I said yes, because there's a particular relief in doing a task you can finish with your hands. I screwed the plate into the jamb until the wood creaked. I tested the bolt 3 times, 4, 5, click, thunk, click, thunk. I tried to nap that afternoon, and every time I drifted, I heard the kettle from some hallway in my mind. When the kettle screamed, again, it wasn't on the counter. It screamed from inside the narrow closet. Door barely parted because of the hasp, steam rolling from the crack like a mouth exhaling in winter. I stood at the line in the wood, where the grain darkened and the light died, and I could not make my hand lift. The kettle wailed and wailed, then went silent, as if a palm had sealed its mouth. Do you know the sound of a hand on the other side of a door? Finger pads make a muted slide, a human weight that doors are made to carry. Something like that pressed against the wood. I said, "Hello," so quietly that it wasn't a question. The hand slid down. The hasp rattled as if something inside had forgotten how to work it. The silence that followed wasn't clean. It held a breath and a choice, and then the quiet footsteps of retreating. I unlocked the hasp with the small padlock. Key the landlord had left on a ring with nothing labeled. The closet door swung inward and bumped against shelves that shouldn't have been there. Not shelves as in somewhere to store shoes. Shelves like ribs, raw 2x4s, spaced close together, running the depth of the closet to the back wall, deadening into something that wasn't a wall exactly. It was another door, waist high, with a thumb-turn latch on my side and 3 dark scratches where someone had tried and failed to pry it open. The kettle sat on the floor of the closet, cord threaded back under the door to a plug I couldn't see. Its stainless steel dome was smeared with a greasy handprint, like someone had tried to hold it shut. The hardware store sells a kind of courage, the kind that folds into your pocket like a utility knife. I turned the latch. The small door didn't give. I took the screwdriver. The screw squealed and then surrendered. The door, liberated, shivered forward 1/2 inch on its own, breathing a smell that did not belong to apartment's earth. Wood. Something that had been closed in and forgotten. I lifted the door. Hinges complained. My flashlight found a low tunnel beyond, running the width of the wall, disappearing left and right. I've lived in enough strange places to know. Old houses up, they keep the traces of other lives' call chutes walled over. Dumbwaiters retired and filled with bad wallpaper. Servant passages, crawl spaces, flues that let voices travel. But to open a door inside a closet, inside a small apartment you just learned to lie to, and find a corridor that goes somewhere, it does something to time. It stands up on its legs. Hello, I said again, louder, because that word is a talisman in our mouths. We believe it can make us visible and safe. I aimed the light to the left first. The tunnel opened into the guts of the house, the backside of my kitchen cabinets. A slice of the hallway to the right. It ran behind the bathroom, then turned hard at an angle that made no sense. The floor of the crawl space had been compressed by knees and elbows. A dark comma on the wood was either old oil or newer blood. Farther inside, nails crowned through from the other side of the studs, like thin patience. There was no kettle cord. There was nothing but a sound like someone breathing in my other ear. The echo traveling the tunnels back upon itself. I shut the door. I screwed it back into place with my hands shaking so badly that the head stripped and one screw fell, clinking, into that small, deniable darkness. I stood looking at the closet for so long that the angle of the sun shifted and the room's edges grew blunt. I did not sleep inside the apartment that night. I took my backpack and my laptop and my wallet, and I went down the stairs. At the base of the stairwell, by the buzzer panel, someone had taped a flyer. Community watch meeting. Tonight, 7 p.m. Basement laundry. I checked the time. It was 6:58. I didn't plan to go. I didn't plan anything except the Sable Motel on Route 4 because I needed to know if it was a place and not a word a printer had once dreamt. But the basement door, the one my plastic key was made for, clicked when I pressed it, and the smell of bleach slid up the stairs, and the sound of voices landed on my shoulders like familiarity. The basement wasn't just laundry. It was a low room with concrete floor and 2 rows of folding chairs set in front of a corkboard. Someone had dragged a percolator down there, and it burbled coffee like a friendly old machine that believed in optimism. About a dozen people were already seated. Neighbors who all looked like neighbors. A young couple with a stroller. An old man with a baseball cap that announced a war he survived. A woman in scrubs rubbing the bridge of her nose. The landlord, in his suit that didn't fit. "Welcome," said a woman at the corkboard, and people tipped their heads the way they do around clipboard people, because clipboards mean responsibility. "Thanks for coming. We've had some incidents in the building." She glanced at the landlord, and the neighborhood watch asked if we could share tips. "Incidents," muttered the woman in scrubs, not loudly enough to count, but loud enough to be heard. "We've had reports of break-ins," said the clipboard woman. "Minor theft, laundry going missing." unusual noises. If you see something, say something. We're recommending door cameras, additional locks. Always check the identity of repair people. Who is stealing laundry? Asked the old man. Who wants my pants? Snickers. The landlord made a small motion with his hand, as if he was smoothing flyaway hair, but had none to smooth. Transients, he said. We've had some movement through the area. The city is working on it. Transients crowding the closets, said the woman in scrubs, eyes tired and bright. Is the city handling that too? Clipboard woman tried to stare her down. The woman in scrubs didn't blink. Do you have something to share, Ms. Rana? She said. And yeah, I'm in Unit D. The closet in my bedroom goes nowhere. Nowhere on the floor plan, I mean. But it breathes. And for the last month, my kids wake up at 2-something with nightmares and say there's a man whispering through the vent. The whispering is a recording. By the way, it loops. 2-something. I said, my voice too loud in my mouth. What time? She looked at me properly then, and for a thick second neither of us said it. Then she said, around 2:15, 2:20. You, 2:17, I said, and a strange relief arrived, the kind that makes you a little dizzy, the kind that tells you your terror has an outline. Clipboard woman cleared her throat. The police recommend. The police came, I said. They told me to get a deadbolt. They didn't open the closet. What's in the closet? Asked the old man, leaning forward, a grin that wasn't kind curling his lip. Jimmy, Hoffer, a tunnel, I said, and a door inside it. It runs behind the walls. That'll be old infrastructure, said the landlord quickly. Previous renovations. It's not unusual to find people, said Rana, no tremble in it. It's not unusual to find people. My kids aren't a renovation. Neither is the handprint on my bathroom mirror that matches nothing in my house. There is a kind of meeting where something true enters like a cold animal, and everyone adjusts their posture because they've left a door open and didn't know. The landlord smiled without teeth. We're addressing it, he said. We've called pest control. Clipboard woman pretended that was a joke and laughed. No one else did. I'm going to the motel, I said. I didn't know why those words chose that moment to leave me, but there they were, clumsy and barefoot. The Sable, on Route 4. Don't, said the old man sharply. Not that place. They rent by the hour and the year. If you go, don't go alone. He turned his cap in his hands and then put it back on, as if he'd made a decision that required armor. I'll come with you. I don't sleep anyway. We left by the alley. The landlord called after us. Tenants should coordinate with management for outside activities. And the old man saluted him with 2 fingers in a way that wasn't polite. His truck was older than either of us. He drove with both hands and no radio. The highway the city's lights receded into dark that looked more honest. The motel arrived like every motel you've ever seen in your bad memory. 2 floors. Doors that open onto a balcony. A sign with letters missing. That once declared colored TV and now promised Wi-Fi. The office was a plexiglass cube lit by a fluorescent bulb that made the clerk look boiled. Sable, I said, as if there might be another Sable at the edge of the world. The clerk slid a paper guest journal toward us. People still wrote their names here, in loops that revealed their age and their education and their hopefulness and their fear that someone would one day read the name and make a connection. My fingers hovered over the column where they asked for plate numbers, driver's licenses, reasons for staying. The old man tapped the glass. We're not checking in, he said. We're looking for someone who might have stayed here, or for your lost and found. The clerk's eyes never left mine. They were the kind of eyes that had watched a lot and been surprised by nothing. He chewed a cuticle until it bled, wiped it on a paper napkin, and said, We don't keep lost and found. Do you keep shoes? Asked the old man. That pierced something. The clerk glanced at a room behind him and then back. We bag items for sanitation, he said. Dump run once a week. Yesterday, I asked. Today. He looked at the napkin, at the dark dot that had been his skin. This morning, he said, You can look if you want. He fetched a black trash bag and dropped it on the counter. It was so light it suggested emptiness, but things rustled inside. I opened it. A toothbrush with chewed bristles. A phone charger without a phone. One shoe, not a pair. Its insole stamped Sable Motel, 633 Route 4. I didn't breathe. I waited for the coincidence to announce itself, and when it did not, I said, "Quiet, do you have hall cameras?" He laughed, not unkindly. "We have cameras as decoration. If I see something, it's because I'm standing there and my eyes aren't closed." The old man said, "Someone staying here knows our building." He didn't say knows our apartments or knows our lives, because those are bigger claims. "You see anyone leave in the last month who came back the next night looking more rested?" The clerk folded the napkin into a triangle, and then a narrower triangle, until it was sharp as a toothpick. "I see people," he said. "Some of them talk to me. Some don't. There's one man sleeps in his car. Sometimes, an old Honda with a bungee cord holding the trunk. He goes out at night with a backpack, and comes back at dawn. He likes to ask me what time it is when the clocks are wrong." "What time?" I asked, the question tasting too heavy. 2:17, he said, with a shrug that said he didn't know why that mattered. He laughs when I tell him. Says it's his time. My hands remembered the second pair of shoes, how they had been placed just so. Toes waiting at the door like a dog. My mouth remembered how it felt to be a person who didn't yet know. There was another person at the edges of his life. "What's his room number?" I asked. "He sleeps in his car," the clerk said. "Sometimes in one to be, if he has money. Tonight, he doesn't. The car is right there. We found it in the corner of the lot, under a light that barely qualified. The trunk had a bungee cord strangling it in place. The windows were fogged from the inside." The old man knocked on the driver's side glass with a knuckle. For a second, nothing, then the slow movement of a human being who had never been startled, awake to anything good. The window scrolled down 2 inches with an electric illness. The man inside was the person you see when you do not look away. He had the kind of beard that grows from not having time instead of from preference. His hair had been cut by indifference. He wore 3 shirts and still looked cold. His eyes were a pale, starved blue, and they widened like a night animal's when they met mine. "You live in my apartment," I said, and the old man murmured something that could have been caution or prayer. The man inside didn't deny it. He looked at my face like he'd been seeing it for months from the wrong angle, the curve of my sleeping jaw instead of the front. He blinked and then smiled in a way that was not unkind but was also not something anyone would call sane. "I don't live anywhere," he said. "I borrow." "Why 217? I asked. "Because that's when the house allows it," he said. He said it simply, like the weather. You hear it too. The ticks, the kettle, the breathing in the walls. The house exhales then. Doors open. If you listen right, you can ride the air. He tapped his temple with a finger that had been burned at the tip. "Old trick," the old man said. "Who told you this?" The man in the car considered the parking lot, the way you do when you are deciding whether the night will be kind. "A man who used to own the building," he said, "before your guy. He said they used those tunnels to move coal and then to move other things. He put a lock on the closet and then gave me a key and said I could trade cleaning the tunnels for a place to sleep when the hour was right. After he died, I kept borrowing. I don't take anything. I don't hurt anyone. I move like a mouse. I use the kettle because it makes steam, and steam makes mirrors behave. I like to see the house breathe. I took 2 steps back because the world had rotated and I hadn't noticed. There are children in Unit D, I said. They hear you. Whisper. I don't whisper to children, he said, almost offended. The vents do that. They keep stories. They push the dead air around for whoever will take it. Then why are there pictures of me in the crawl space? I said, each word heavier, where you sleep. Something like shame moved under his skin. Because I have to know who is there, he said. So I don't step on your chest in the dark. So I know what shape your breath makes. I'm not a bad man. I'm a man in the walls. The old man's. The voice was very gentle. "You can't keep doing this," he said. "You know that. You know we'll call the police, and they'll come and they won't be gentle." The man in the car looked at his hands. He rubbed his thumb and forefinger together like he was feeling the grain of something that wasn't there anymore. "No," he said, "but the house knows me." He looked up at me. "It'll know you too. Not because you want it, because it eats ours. It ate mine. Now it eats yours." He rolled the window up, and we watched our reflections warp. The old man sighed and put his hat back on. "We're still calling," he said. "Not to me, not to the night, but to the future that was already walking toward us." Back at the basement, Rana had made coffee from what remained in the percolator. Her kid's stroller sat folded by the dryer. She listened when we told her, not in shock, but in the heavy acceptance of a nurse who has seen every shape pain takes. "Then we do what we do," she said. "We nail the doors, we seal the vents, we stop pretending we're renting apartments and admit we're buying responsibilities. We called the police came like a script you've read before. This time they climbed into the closet. They unscrewed the small door and found the tunnel dark. They found a nest of blankets farther along, a stack of printed photos, me, Rana, the landlord, and a blur that might have been the old man's shoulder at the mailbox. They found canned soup with the labels peeled off, a pair of socks rolled tight like a secret, and a burned spoon that the younger officer stared at too long before he put it in a bag with a careful, practiced hand. They walked the tunnels to where they led behind the building's spine, to a larger space under the stairs between walls, the place where coal once fell and coal once lay. Then to a hatch in the laundry that had always been a panel that everyone assumed was a panel that opened with a shudder. When someone who knew how pressed hard enough, they found footprints in the dust that came and went. They found names carved low where no one would see them except on their elbows. The newest name had the same sharp, uncertain letters as the sable stamp on the shoes in my trash bag. They did not find the man himself. They asked us questions. They used words like trespass and dwelling and intent. They told us what to do. They told us to install cameras, plural. They told us to call if the kettle screamed when it should not. They told us to be careful. Officer 2 left a second card. Officer 1 said, "You'll be fine," and somehow made it sound like a superstition. We sealed the closet with plywood the next day, because wood makes you feel like you've solved something. The landlord whined about property value. Rana told him to bring his kids to her apartment to sleep if he was so sure it was safe. He shut up, which counts as bravery for some men. I bought vent covers and a tube of cork and worked like a person who believes he can make a circle around himself. The old man, whose name I still did not know, sat by my door on a folding chair and watched the hallway with his chin on his chest, like a guardian who had chosen a small kingdom and would not be persuaded it was smaller than it looked. The first night after, I slept like a person who had just learned to swim and wanted to trust water. At 2:16, the ceiling ticked. At 2:17, the kettle did not scream. I woke at 2:19 anyway, and lay in the dark listening for a sound that wasn't coming and hearing 100 that were. The building reset its bones. The wind tested the windows. Someone down the hall coughed, exactly 3 times, paused, then coughed a 4th. I got up and walked to the kitchen and made tea the ordinary way, just to remind the kettle it could have a quiet life. When I turned around, the closet door, the sealed closet door, was still, a sheet of blonde plywood with 20 shiny screws, and my heart did not leap. I breathed in a way that didn't hurt. I drank the tea, and its heat moved through me like a polite guest. The second night, I slept past the hour. The third night, I dreamed of open fields. The fourth night, I woke not to a sound, but to a smell. The exact smell I had come to dread, skin that has been under blankets too long. Damp wool, the metallic temps of breath that has counted hours. I opened my eyes to the dark and saw nothing, because that is what dark does. I reached for my phone and swiped it awake. 2:17. There was a shape in the doorway to the bedroom. Not tall, not theatrical, not a silhouette that wants to be a movie. A person, ordinary height, hands loose at his sides, head tilted as if to read a bedside note. I said his name even though I didn't know it, because some words you inherit. He said nothing. The shape did not move. Please, I said, and then hated that I'd said that, because please is a word you donate to the hungry. The shape breathed, the walls breathed, the apartment turned its face to listen. He said, very softly, as if he did not want to wake, "The building, I told you, it eats ours. It didn't eat your wood." He turned away. He left not like a person who runs, but like a person who has a schedule. I followed to the kitchen, and there was no one there. The closet door was still, sealed. The hallway was empty. The deadbolt still held, the peephole tissue still painted over. I put my palm to the plywood, and it sang a little in that way wood sings when it has a hollow behind it. And I put my head to the door, and I listened, and I heard not voices, not whispering, not the old man with his melted voice, just a sound. The housemaid that could have been mice, and could have been nothing, and could have been the strange patient hunger of a place that has held too many people too tightly for too long. I moved out a month later. I could make you a list of reasons that sound responsible. The commute, the light, the way the landlord lied in small and exhausting ways, the price of a second lock. The truth is simpler. I learned too much about where I slept. Some knowings don't let you rest inside them. My new apartment is on the 3rd floor of a building that was built 3 years ago and proudly has no personality. The closets are closets. The vents make only honest sounds. The peephole is glass and looks where I tell it to. I have friends over without warning. I leave my shoes lying however they land. I do not wake at 2:17 most nights. On the nights I do, I go to the kitchen and I put my palm on the kettle and I tell it, we are fine. I listen hard and I hear only my pulse and the clock and the priceless silence of a place that doesn't remember other lives. When I walk home late, sometimes I see him, or a person who could be him, because there are many hims if you let your eyes say so. He is sitting on a low wall, or standing in a doorway where the light has a dead bug in it, or near the bus stop with the schedule turned the wrong way. Does not look at me, because part of the bargain is that we do not look. I walk past and feel an edge of air that has been breathed and breathed again. I walk past and I do not run. I walk past and I listen to the city's thick blood, and I do not hear the kettle. I listen to the hour. The hour listens to me. Last week, I propped my door for the delivery guy because the building's lock is sticky and I was tired of jogging the stairs. I signed for a package. I did not order a small cardboard box with no return address and my name printed in that sharp, uncertain hand from the crawl space. Inside, under a napkin folded to a point, was a single shoe, thin-soled, cracking at the heel. On the insole, a stamp. Not Sable Motel, not an address at all, just a time. Someone had cut the stamp and pressed it there themselves. A little crooked, a little proud. 2:17. I threw the box out. I took it to the chute at the end of the hall and let the bag vanish like the rest of the building's refuse. I went back inside and sat on the floor because my knees preferred the truth. At 9:13 a.m., my phone rang. A number I didn't know. A voice I had to cross a bridge to reach. "I found a place," he said. "Not a wall, a place with a bed. Not mine, but it will be as long as I clean the rooms when the hour is right. I won't come back." "Good," I said, and meant it, and also didn't know if good was a thing that existed. He shouldn't. "The house wants to learn you," he said. "It will try to in other places. Be boring. Boredom is a closed door." He hung up. I let the phone look at me until its light went black. I made tea in a kettle that has never screamed anywhere but in my mind. I breathed. The apartment breathed back. Some people deserve a better ending than this. Tied with twine and labeled for storage somewhere that doesn't stink of rain. Some buildings deserve a fire and a forgetfulness no human can grant them. Some hours deserve to be renamed. I will not rename it. I will not set an alarm. When I wake at that minute, I learned the shape of. I will do what I have learned to do. I will listen. If I hear breathing in the walls, I will tell myself it is mine. If I smell the old motel, I will open a window. If I feel a hand on the other side of a door, I will put my palm flat against the wood and wait for nothing and be grateful when nothing arrives. And if I ever hear the kettle scream again, I will take it as proof that a thing can be remembered without being allowed back. In Dot, the building on my old street still stands. Rana moved to a place with a courtyard where her boys chase each other past a tree with a name. The old man sits in a different hallway now, not because he likes hallways, but because the city is made of them if you look at it right. The landlord sold the property and bought himself a suit that fit. The new owner replaced the closet doors with closets that do not go anywhere. The police report is somewhere in a drawer that has no stories. The motel clerk cut his nails and doesn't bleed on napkins so much anymore. Everyone who lives in the cracks will tell you this is a happy ending because it includes a roof. When people ask where I live now, I give them the address. When they ask how I sleep, I say, like a person who owns all his hours except one. And if they ask which one I mean, I tell them. A time of night that I don't say out loud. And then, because I am trying to be a person who is not ruled by numbers pressed into shoes or doors that open the wrong way, I say something else, to make them laugh. Then I go home and make tea and leave the kettle's lid tilted just so steam can leave my house like a truth that knows when it's not welcome. There are cities where whole blocks link under the skin with tunnels and whispers. There are towns where you can ride the air if you listen to the right minute. There are rooms that have learned to arrange themselves around guests they did not invite. There are people the world is always teaching to move soundlessly. I do not know if I will be one of them forever. I only know that the hour is patient, and that in certain places, in certain buildings, in certain lives, patience is an open door. You nail shut every morning and check every night, all over again.